Welcome back, everyone. Last time, if you remember, we had set up our tile sets. We will now work on episode 2, focusing on creating our first map. We're going to call this map Traveling Boat. For anyone who's not familiar with my method of operations when it comes to these video games, I always start by setting up 2 primary maps as placeholders. One is called the saved events map. Let's do that now. The next one is called the black screen map. All right, we have our placeholder. We have our saved events map. And now to create our real first map, which I call the traveling boat map. Just for anyone who's not very familiar, this is obviously the name of the map, but this is what's going to be displayed on the map when it first shows up. So just for a few seconds, it'll show up. It'll probably say at sea and it'll disappear. I think I'm going to make one more tweak to this map, and just instead of just saying at sea, let's make it a little bit more interesting. Somewhere at sea. So that way it seems like the first portion of the game the person sees is a quick scene that shows up. It says somewhere at sea. Okay. The next thing, as we talked about, is really selecting the tile sets, right? So if you select the tile sets for this particular map, overworld, and I like to play around with my map size. So for now, I'm going to try 15. This is where it gets fun, guys. You can play around with the map size just so that where you can see what works best for your video game. Sometimes I'll do 17 by 13. And then if I feel like the map is not big enough, I'll do 17 by 15. Let's just go ahead and create a sea or an ocean. This is the first map, guys. All right, we're done. This is so great. Just kidding. This is the first part of the map. Obviously, whenever you create a first map, that just shows you the ground that or foundation you're setting up for the scene that's going to be created or for what's actually going to happen in the game. So for this particular scene, you have the first map where it's at sea, but what's actually happening at sea. This is where you'll bring in other items that you may need in your video games, like different events, the player, and things of that nature. So let's do that now. When you think about being at sea, one of the first things that comes to mind is a ship, right? So let's just go ahead and add a ship. If you think about it, you can kind of go through all your tools, all your the different sprite sheets that you have in the video game, but just as a quick reminder, you have different vehicles already as part of your resources. You can use one of those as the ship for the event. Sometimes you can even change the size, modify it a bit. Like for me, for example, I would make this ship even a little bit smaller, so that way it looks like you're looking at it from a far distance. So let's go ahead and set up the ship. Select here. Go to events. Select your vehicles. Select the trajectory of the ship. And you want to show that it's moving. For this event, we're going to set up 2 pages. The first page, in terms of the movement for the ship, we're going to leave it as fixed because what we're trying to do is set the scene. So when you first see the ship, you don't want the ship to automatically start moving. Kind of leave it there for a moment, just so that way the player can get a feel for it. So I'll change that to parallel. Wait for a few frames. I know 250 sounds a lot, but it's really not. And then afterwards, I'll start the actual motion in the game. All right, so let's set up the second page. You're copying the event page, pasting it as page 2. You're turning on cell switch A. Stepping you don't need because now you're actually going to be in motion. And now what you're going to do is you're going to change the movement to custom. And for this, it's going to be fairly straightforward. Just tell the boat to just keep moving up and keep repeating it. This is the option to basically repeat the same steps and procedures here. And then you can also select skip if you want to put obstacles in the way of the ship, but for this purpose, it's not necessary. So what would happen is if you did select that, if there was a rock or something that was in the way of the ship, it would skip all of those steps and move to the next one. So instead of moving forward, it would, let's say like there was moving left, moving right here. It would basically skip, move up. It would do the next one, move left, so it can go around the rock. But for the purpose of this, we're not doing that. We're just going to have the ship moving straight forward. You select that. Once you have that set up, you do not need any of this because the motion that the ship is going to provide is just movement. And this particular event is done. For a lot of my events, I like to give them their own personal names just to remind myself of what I'm doing. So, intro, ship 1. Just in case in the future, I may decide to add more ships in there. I know it's ship 1. This event is set. Do I like it here at 14? I'll move it 1 over. That's fine. Being at sea, the next thing that comes to mind after a ship is probably a bird, seagull, or something of that nature. Same thing as usual. Take a look at your assets to see if you have a bird that you can use. Let's go ahead and set that up. Look at nature. We don't see any birds. We do not want to use the dragon. We do not see any of the birds. So that means we have to create our own sprites for it. So let's do that. Okay. I've created my tiles, my new sprite sheet with the birds. Let's go ahead and import it into my resources. All right, I've brought that in. Now we can create our actual bird for the scene. My small birds, and I'll select the seagull here. The reason why I like to select through for some of these is just because, just in case you make changes in the future, this is just a scene that you want the person to experience. So you don't want anything to stop any of the events from doing what they're supposed to execute. So you kind of put that as through, so that way they can continue all their motion. Similar to the ship, I'll call this bird 1. And for the bird, I want to give the bird a pattern of movement. So I select customs. I'll say move, I guess upper right, move upper right, move upper right, move up. And what you would like to do is you don't want the bird to repeat the same thing every single time. So then put something like, move at random again, and then move back up, and then repeat these same steps over and over. You can play around with different options, but for me, I'm just going to set that out just for now. Now that I've set up the actions for that, I'll say apply. Okay. Now these two events have been set up on the map. The next thing that I think about are clouds and things of that nature. So I'll import one more tile sprite sheet for my clouds. When you play with the clouds, there's different places you can put them. I like to put them right in the center because what you're trying to do is get the clouds to give you a feel for the entire screen. So if it's right in the center, wherever you actually draw your image of the clouds, it will show up exactly where you need it. So let's set up the clouds. This is what the cloud looks like. Just to kind of give you guys an idea of how I created this. I use Photoshop to create this, and it's very straightforward on Photoshop. I think it's either the cloud or the flash you use, and then you remove the segments that you do not need in the image, and what's left over represent your clouds. I can always do a tutorial on that if you guys want to see it as well. But send me a comment. Let me know if you want me to show you how to do that. But for now, I'll use my example. After you look at it, you can give me your input in terms of whether it's something that you would like to learn about as well. I select my clouds. And just like the stepping motion of a character, you want the clouds to have a similar stepping motion. So I select stepping, change the name. Event number 3 is now ready. If you like this video, please leave a comment and subscribe below for future content.